No, I won't do that, because Pope Leo has said the wrong things. He strongly opposes what I'm doing to Iran, while we can't afford a nuclear Iran. Pope Leo won't be happy with the final outcome. That's how Mr. Trump responded to the press when asked whether he would apologize to the Pope. The geopolitical landscape was fundamentally altered over the weekend of April 12–13, 2026, as a public and increasingly vitriolic confrontation erupted between the 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and the sovereign of the Vatican City-State, Pope Leo XIV. This clash represents more than a mere diplomatic spat. It is a profound collision between the doctrine of national realism and the tradition of universalist moral authority. The friction reached a flashpoint on the evening of April 12, 2026. While delegates from the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran were convening for high-stakes direct negotiations in Islamabad, Pakistan, a regional pivot point intended to de-escalate the looming threat of nuclear breakout, Pope Leo XIV delivered a pointed homily during an evening prayer service at St. Peter's Basilica. The Pope, the first American to hold the papacy, utilized his platform to issue a blistering critique of contemporary statecraft. Enough with the cult of ego and money. Enough with the ostentatious display of power, enough with war, Leo XIV declared to the assembled faithful. He explicitly called for world leaders to abandon decisions of mutual aggression and commit to the peace table. While the Vatican maintains these comments were rooted in the gospel, the timing, coinciding exactly with the Pakistan summit, was interpreted by the White House as a direct attempt to undermine American coercive diplomacy. President Trump's response was immediate and characteristically blunt. Late on April 12th, the president utilized official communication channels and social media to launch a targeted critique of the pontiff. Trump characterized Leo XIV as weak on crime and disastrous on foreign policy. In a statement that sent shockwaves through the diplomatic corps, the president challenged the Pope's ideological alignment, stating, "I don't want a pope who thinks it's okay for Iran to have nuclear weapons. I don't want a pope who thinks it's bad for the U.S. to strike Venezuela, a country that has flooded our streets with drugs." Most pointedly, Trump asserted that the American-born pope does not have the MAGA spirit, essentially questioning the pontiff's alignment with the current trajectory of American national interest. The situation escalated further on April 13, 2026. During a press encounter at the White House, a reporter cited Bishop Robert Barron of Minnesota, a prominent figure in the American Catholic hierarchy, who suggested that the president owes Pope Leo an apology for the personal nature of the attacks. President Trump's response was a definitive refusal. "No, I will not do that, because Pope Leo has said things that are fundamentally wrong," Trump stated. "He is vehemently opposed to what I am doing regarding Iran, yet we cannot allow a nuclear Iran. Pope Leo will not be happy with the final result." The president further justified his stance by positioning himself as the respondent rather than the aggressor. "I think he is very weak on crime and other things, so I will not apologize. He spoke first, and I am simply responding to the Pope." Later that day, following his own press briefing, Pope Leo XIV remained steadfast. He clarified that the Vatican's message of peace and reconciliation is a mandate of the gospel and not a political maneuver. When asked about the tension with Washington, the pontiff remarked that he is not afraid of the Trump administration and vowed to continue advocating for multilateralism and dialogue to resolve global conflicts. From the perspective of strategic realism, the confrontation between President Trump and Pope Leo XIV is not a theological debate. It is a power struggle over the moral high ground and the strategic narrative. We are witnessing a fundamental shift in how international legitimacy is brokered in the mid-20th century. The fact that Pope Leo XIV is an American is the most critical variable in this equation. In the eyes of the Trump administration, a pope of American origin who opposes America First policies is not merely a religious dissenter, but a domestic political liability. By accusing the Pope of lacking the MAGA spirit, Trump is attempting to decouple the American Catholic voter base from the Vatican's influence. This is a high-stakes gamble. The administration is signaling that national identity and the populist mandate supersede religious or denominational loyalty. For the realist, this is an attempt to close the leak in domestic support that a popular charismatic pope could cause. Identity politics has now breached the walls of the Vatican. The direct talks in Pakistan between the U.S. and Iran are the hard power backdrop to this soft power conflict. Realist theory dictates that the U.S. must maintain a credible threat of force to extract concessions from Tehran. When the Pope calls for an end to the display of power at the exact moment negotiations begin, he is effectively weakening the U.S. bargaining position. Trump's refusal to apologize is a strategic necessity to maintain the madman or strongman posture essential for high-stakes nuclear diplomacy. To apologize would be to concede that moral considerations, represented by the Pope, have a veto over national security requirements. In the theater of power, an apology is often mistaken for a surrender of resolve. Trump's specific mention of Venezuela is behind the curtain insight into the administration's broader strategic map. By linking the Pope's weakness to the drug trade and Venezuelan instability, Trump is framing the Vatican as an obstacle to Western hemispheric security. The administration views the Pope's advocacy for non-intervention as a de facto protection of adversarial regimes. Realism views the Caribbean and South America as the U.S. near abroad. Any external influence, even a moral one from the Holy See, that limits U.S. freedom of action in its own backyard is treated as a strategic threat. The Monroe Doctrine has been updated to include a rejection of clerical interference. This clash mirrors the historical tensions between Henry VIII and the papacy, or Napoleon's interactions with Pius VII. However, in 2026, the stakes are nuclear. We are entering a new Westphalian era where the state is reasserting absolute primacy over all other forms of authority, including the spiritual. The Pope's emphasis on multilateralism is a direct challenge to the unilateral realism of the current White House. While the Pope speaks for the global community, Trump speaks for the national interest. These two concepts are currently in a state of irreconcilable divergence. The primary risk for the Trump administration is the alienation of the global Catholic demographic, particularly in Latin America and Europe, where the Pope's words carry immense weight. However, the realist calculation suggests that the administration values strategic autonomy over global popularity. A secondary risk is the potential for the Vatican to act as a back channel for U.S. adversaries. If the Holy See perceives the U.S. as a rogue actor that ignores moral constraints, it may increase its diplomatic cooperation with China or the EU to balance American power. The Vatican remains the world's oldest intelligence agency. Making it an enemy has costs that do not show up on a balance sheet. For decades, conservative American politics and the Catholic Church were often aligned on social issues. That era is over. The current conflict proves that when pro-life or traditional values collide with national security and economic protectionism, the latter will always take precedence for a realist administration. The president's refusal to apologize is a declaration of independence from the moral constraints of the international order. It is a signal to Iran, to Venezuela, and to the Vatican itself. The United States will pursue its objectives with or without the blessing of the cathedral. As we monitor the unfolding situation from Islamabad to the Vatican, it is clear that the traditional boundaries of diplomacy are being redrawn. The clash between President Trump and Pope Leo XIV is a harbinger of a world where moral authority is no longer a shield against the cold realities of national interest. This is a story of two sovereigns, each convinced of their own mandate, vying for the soul of the international order. We will continue to track the fallout of this rupture and its impact on the Iran negotiations. This is Global Report.